You book the place. You read the reviews. 5 stars. Charming host. Quiet neighborhood. What could go wrong? Everything. These are real stories. Real people. Real Airbnbs. And they will make you think twice before you ever unlock a stranger's door again. I travel alone a lot for work. Conferences, client meetings, I've stayed in dozens of Airbnbs over the years without a single problem. So when I booked a private room in a townhouse in the city for a 3-night stay, I didn't think twice. The listing said the host, I'll call him Marcus, lived on the upper floor and would leave a key in the lockbox. Private entrance. No shared spaces except the hallway. Simple enough. I arrived late on a Tuesday night, around 11. The lockbox code worked fine. I let myself in, climbed the narrow staircase to my room on the 2nd floor, and immediately noticed the space felt lived in. Not dirty, just warm, like someone had been sitting there recently. The throw blanket on the reading chair looked freshly adjusted. A glass of water sat on the nightstand and it had condensation on it. Fresh condensation. I told myself the host had just prepared the room. That made sense. I unpacked, showered, and climbed into bed. Sometime around 2 a.m, I woke up. I don't know what pulled me out of sleep, but my eyes opened and I lay perfectly still, staring at the ceiling. Then I heard it. Breathing. Not from upstairs. Not from outside. From inside the room. I didn't move. I couldn't. My entire body had gone rigid. I slowly turned my head toward the corner near the wardrobe. There was a shape there. Standing. Still. Just watching me. I screamed. I don't even remember deciding to, it just came out of me. The shape moved, and I heard Marcus's voice. Hey, sorry, I was just checking the window latch. He left immediately. Closed the door behind him. Like it was nothing. I sat there shaking for 20 minutes. My door had no lock. I shoved the reading chair under the handle and didn't sleep again. In the morning I left before he woke up and filed a complaint with the platform. His response? He said I had misunderstood the situation. The listing was taken down 3 weeks later. I still don't know how long he'd been standing there before I woke up. My friend Dana and I rented a 2-bedroom cottage for a long weekend. It was an older property timber frame, exposed brick, that rustic charm that looks great in photos. The host communicated quickly, the reviews were excellent, and the price was reasonable for the area. We were excited. The cottage was set back from the road, surrounded by trees on 3 sides. It had that perfect secluded feel. We arrived Friday evening and immediately started settling in wine, music, cooking together in the tiny kitchen. Everything felt great until Dana went to put her coat in the storage cupboard beneath the staircase. She opened the door and then just stopped. She called me over in this very flat, very quiet voice. The kind of voice people use when they don't want to cause a panic but absolutely need backup. Inside the cupboard, under the stairs, there was a sleeping bag. Rolled out flat. Not stored laid out, like someone had been sleeping there. Beside it, a plastic bag with food wrappers, an empty water bottle, and a small flashlight. There was also a paperback novel, dog-eared to roughly the halfway point. Like someone had set it down mid-read and stepped out. We stood in the hallway, staring at each other. The front door was unlocked. The back door, which we hadn't checked, was unlocked too. Every window on the ground floor was latched from the inside, but several had no secondary lock. We called the host immediately. She sounded shocked, or did a very convincing impression of shock. She said she'd had maintenance workers in earlier that week, and maybe one of them had left belongings behind. But that sleeping bag wasn't left behind. That sleeping bag was arranged. Someone had made themselves a little nest under our staircase and had been using this cottage, this supposedly private, guest-only cottage, as a place to sleep. We didn't stay. We drove 40 minutes to the nearest town and paid for a hotel room out of our own pockets. The host offered us a partial refund and kept insisting it was a simple mix-up. We later found out from another reviewer buried in the comments, weeks after our stay, that she'd noticed a musty smell from the understairs closet and found what looked like personal items inside. She'd left a 2-star review. The host had flagged it as unhelpful. I want to be clear about something before I tell you this. I am not a paranoid person. I'm an engineer. I think in systems and logic. I don't spiral. Which is exactly why what happened to me was so deeply unsettling, because there was no logical explanation except the one I didn't want to accept. I was staying alone in a studio apartment for a week-long work trip. Clean place, good location, highly rated. The host, a woman named Renata, based on the profile, had dozens of 5-star reviews. The apartment itself was modern and well decorated. I remember thinking it felt almost too perfect, like a showroom. On the 3rd night, I was brushing my teeth and I noticed the bathroom mirror was slightly off-center on the wall. Not dramatically, just a few millimeters tilted. I straightened it out of habit and felt that it was mounted on a panel rather than directly on the tile. Curious, I pressed along the edges. The left side shifted slightly. I pulled it away from the wall just enough to look behind it. There was a small device fixed to the back of the mounting panel, roughly the size of a thumb drive, with a lens, pointed through a near invisible pinhole in the lower right corner of the mirror frame, positioned at body height. I stood there for a moment that felt like a very long time. Then I put the mirror back exactly as I'd found it, walked out of the bathroom, and sat on the edge of the bed. I thought about how long I'd been in that apartment. 3 days. 3 mornings. Every shower. I didn't touch the device. I photographed it through the gap with my phone, screenshot the listing, screenshotted every conversation with the host, and then I called the non-emergency police line. The officers who came were calm and professional, but I could see the look they exchanged when I showed them. They recognized it immediately. They'd seen this type of device before. The host's profile disappeared from the platform within 48 hours. I was contacted by 2 other women who had stayed in that same apartment in the months prior. Neither of them had found anything. Neither of them knew what had been happening. Until I told them. I was visiting a coastal town with my boyfriend, Theo. We'd rented a small beach house for 5 nights, detached, private garden, about 100 meters from the water. The listing photos were gorgeous, and the host was responsive. First time either of us had stayed somewhere like it. The first 2 days were perfect. Walks on the beach, evenings on the patio, that kind of thing. On the third day, a man appeared at the garden gate. 60s, weathered face, work clothes. He introduced himself as the neighbor he owned the property directly to the left. He seemed friendly. He asked if we were enjoying Owen's place. Owen was the host's name, yes. We said we were. He nodded, looked at the house, then said something odd. He said, "I saw your light on last night, pretty late. Couldn't sleep either?" We hadn't had any lights on past 11. We'd both been in bed by 10:30. I smiled and said we must have left the porch light on by accident. He nodded again slowly and said, "No, it was the bedroom. The window that faces my garden." The bedroom window that faced his garden had a blackout blind that we had pulled completely down every night. There was no way he could have seen a light from his garden through a fully closed blackout blind. Not unless he was much closer than his garden. Theo laughed it off. I didn't. That evening, I walked the perimeter of the house slowly, looking at the fencing and the hedgerow. I found a gap in the hedge between the two properties wide enough for a person to stand in. The ground in the gap was pressed flat, not from animals. There were partial boot prints. I messaged the host. His reply took almost 12 hours and said only, "Derek is harmless, don't worry about him." Don't worry about him. The neighbor who was standing in a hedge watching our bedroom window at midnight. Harmless. We left the next morning. Theo thought I was overreacting. Maybe. But I keep thinking about the word harmless and how the host knew Derek well enough to vouch for him without asking a single question about what Derek had actually done. This one still gives me chills when I think about it, and it happened almost 2 years ago. My sister and I rented an apartment in an old converted building, lots of original features, heavy iron door handles, thick stone walls. Beautiful, honestly. We were there for 4 nights for her birthday trip. On the second night, we came back from dinner around 10. Used the key code on the building entrance, took the elevator to the 4th floor, and put the physical key in the apartment door. It didn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. I tried the spare. Nothing. We stood in the hallway for a moment, confused. I looked at the door. Really looked at it. The lock was different. Subtly same style, same finish, but the scratch pattern around the keyhole was different, and the small model number stamped into the faceplate was different from what I'd noticed when we checked in. Someone had swapped the lock on our apartment door while we were out at dinner. My sister thought I was imagining things until I showed her the photo I'd taken on day 1 when I was documenting the flat for my own records. Something I always do when traveling alone or with family. Different lock. Unambiguously. We called the platform emergency line. They were helpful but couldn't reach the host. We stood in that corridor for 90 minutes while they tried. During that time, I became very aware that whoever had changed the lock was presumably inside or had a key to the new lock, or both. All of our belongings, our passports, our laptops, everything were on the other side of that door. The host eventually called back and said there'd been a miscommunication with maintenance and the wrong lock had been replaced. He sent someone with a new key within the hour. We got into the apartment and everything appeared untouched. Appeared. We spent the remaining nights in a hotel and spent the following week monitoring our bank accounts and changing passwords for everything we'd accessed on devices in that apartment. Nothing happened. Maybe it really was just a maintenance error. But here's what I can't stop thinking about. Who carries out a lock change in the evening, on an occupied rental, without any notice to the guests? 5 stays, 5 hosts, 5 stories that never made it into the reviews. Because sometimes people are too shaken to write them. Check behind the mirrors. Check the locks. And if something feels wrong, trust that feeling. It's kept people safe before. Sleep well.